So actually, let's leave those doors open so people can come on in if they want to. That would be great.
Listen in to the forum at St. James Church. Today, our Eucharist series continues.
So we are continuing our series on the Eucharist, and I've been asked to lead this session on the when of the Eucharist, as in who, why, what, when, and where. I'm doing the when of the Eucharist, about the Eucharist and its relationship to time. I want to start with just a couple of notes about all of us as human beings. We live according to rhythms of various sorts. There is the 24-hour cycle of a day, which is very much tied to the cycles of light and dark. There's actually, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but there's an ad for people who are blind called Non-24. Because the truth is, if you lose that circadian rhythm, it really throws off your life. And this medication, I'm told, is designed to get you back onto that 24-hour cycle when you can't see light and dark. Light and dark make a huge difference to us. It's also part of why we get thrown initially, both when we gain daylight savings time or we lose it. So who knows what's happening next Sunday? Please set your clocks back an hour. If you live on the east side, it means you get an extra hour of sleep. How fab is that? If you live on the west side, it means you need that hour to get here because of the marathon. So I'm just telling you, you get the hour, but you need to figure out how to use that. Exactly. And again, people who do not typically live there will tell you how disorienting it is to go to a land of the midnight sun. It's really hard not to have day and night in some clear and ongoing relationship to each other. Now, in the temperate climate zones, we are also really aware of seasons. So, who here has a favorite season? Sarah, why is it your favorite season?
Fall, and it's because that first day when the air turns and it's crisp and you feel your blood move, and I just love it.
Okay, so Sarah loves the fall. Yes.
I like the fall because it's pretty.
Because it's pretty. You get all those leaves. And I love the fact that the New York Times actually does a little chart of where it's peak and where it's past peak, where it's almost peak. It's one of the weird things the New York Times does. Deborah.
I like summer because it feels free.
Summer comes with a sense of freedom. Maddie.
I love spring because it's as if everybody has been inside, and the first nice day in New York, everybody comes out on the street.
So spring, all these pent-up New Yorkers suddenly emerge on the streets on the first night day. Do I have any votes for winter? Phoebe.
Because it starts getting lighter first day of winter.
Because it starts getting lighter when you get into winter. That's right, the solstice on the 21st. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it, but it's starting to get lighter. Okay, but in every climate, and I lived for a period of 9 months in the Caribbean, in every climate, the year is broken up by certain holidays and celebrations, and they happen at set times of the year or at times related to the sun and its path. And all of those are occasions that help orient us to time and place. So as I think most of us here probably know, there are seasons in the church year. What are they? When does the year start in the Christian calendar? Advent. Does Advent start on a fixed day? No, it doesn't. Why not?
It's related to Christmas. Easter is back from fixed day.
It's related to Christmas, and there need to be 4 Sundays before Christmas. So the start of Advent is actually built around the date for Christmas, which is the 25th. So Advent's the first season. What's the next? Christmas and Christmastide. Exactly. Okay. What comes after that? Epiphany. What day does Epiphany start on? The 6th. What happened on the 6th? Why do we think it happened on the 6th? I just got to be very honest. I have no clue. Nope. It's the 12th day of Christmas when the kings come. So it's the 12th day of Christmas. We've assigned that to the kings. Why did they actually pick December 25th as Christmas? Competition with another holiday. What was that holiday? Saturnalia, which goes back to the issue of the light coming into the world at the turn of the year. And so that was a big Roman holiday. And so the Christians, this did not happen in the first few years after Jesus' death. The church decided he's the real light coming into the world. So December 25th. So that's how they picked that one. So, okay, we have Advent, Christmastide, Epiphany. What's after Epiphany? When does Lent start? 40 days before Easter. That's right. How many days are there actually, if we're just counting the calendar in Lent? How many days are there? Trick question. It's 46 or 47. Why is that? Because we don't count Sundays. If you look at a Christian calendar, it will say that it is the first Sunday in Lent. It is not the first Sunday of Lent. It's the first Sunday in Lent, because every Sunday is Easter. Okay? This is also a little break for those of you who like to give things up for Lent. You can cheat a little on the Sunday, just say it. Then what comes after and is kind of part of Lent? Holy Week. Exactly. We have Holy Week, which starts with Palm Sunday and finishes on Holy Saturday. Then what do we have? Eastertide. What comes after Eastertide? By the way, how long does Eastertide last? 50 days, which is important to remember. Lent is 40. That's when we're aware of penitence and needing to turn again to God. But you get 50 days of Easter to celebrate the resurrection. And that does count the Sundays. Yeah, you get 50 days. So after Eastertide, you get Pentecost, which is a day, and it's a Sunday. And what comes after Pentecost? That's right, all the Sundays after Pentecost. All the Sundays after Pentecost. And in fact, if you properly on our bulletin, it tells you which Sunday it is after Pentecost, because that's how it works. So why do we have all these seasons? Why are they helpful? I mean, it's nice church trivia, but why have them all? It's recounting history. Gives us an opportunity to go through the cycle of Jesus' life, with Advent leading to his birth, and Epiphany talking about his ministry, and Lent talking about his suffering. Holy Week, obviously, about the Passion, and then the season after Pentecost, also about his ministry. Why else? Why is it helpful to have those? Abigail.
I think it's to link the church calendar and experience to just life, the seasons of life and weather.
Excellent answer. Abigail said it's actually to link the season of the church year with life. You know, anyone here have a life that's kind of steady state from January 1st to December 31st? Nothing happens. This is kind of a neutral ground, right? Nothing happens. And the truth is that these seasons may not match up with what's happening in your life in the particular days or dates, but they remind us that in our story with Jesus, Jesus actually is able and does understand all the seasons of our lives. Those seasons like Advent of preparation and anticipation, the seasons when we are, in fact, just getting on with our life and hopefully getting on with our life, trying to live as Christians, which is what Epiphany and the season after Pentecost are about, but also those seasons of grief, those seasons of difficulty, those seasons of repentance, and reminding us always that that comes whether we can feel it in our own lives on the particular date or not, that issue is forth into joy with Easter, that the end of the story is always meant to be joy for us. And so we have those seasons to be reminded that Jesus is always present, whatever season we're in our own life. And that's a great gift to us. There was once a church that shall remain nameless that stopped celebrating Lent because they declared they were an Easter people. Well, bully for them. But, but my response to that is no one's an Easter people all the time. All of us know Lent. All of us actually know Holy Week at some point. And being reminded that God is in the midst of that is really important. So Sunday in our life as a church is the key day of the week. Why is that? This is not a hard question. Why is that? Tony?
The day God rested after the creation.
It's the day God rested after the creation, but for us as Christians, why is it essential? Jesus' resurrection. Thank you, Bob. Indeed, because the Sabbath for Jews was, of course, Friday night through Saturday, which is why the Jewish calendar and the Christian calendar don't actually line up. But for Christians, it became the first day of the week because it was when Jesus was risen from the dead. Now, some churches have weekday Eucharists, and they have them every single day of the week. We have one on Wednesday morning. If you've never been, it's fabulous. It's at 8 o'clock. It's followed by a great Bible study, if you can stick around. But if not, you can do the Eucharist and head on off to work. But every church will have a Sunday Eucharist every single week. And there will be variations according to the liturgical season, including the readings will change. What else changes depending on the season? Vestments. What about those vestments? Because we're still wearing stoles and sometimes chasubles. The colors change depending on the season. And in tone, right now we're singing the Gloria every Sunday, but we will certainly in Lent and sometimes in Advent, we'll switch over to the Kyrie, which is Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy. So we switched some things, but in every single week, Sunday is the principal service. Now, what I'd like you to do at your tables is to share with each other what you come to church on Sunday, this Sunday maybe in particular, but any Sunday perhaps, expecting or hoping for. What are you hoping for or expecting when you get ready to come to church on Sunday? And after you've all shared this, and I am really not giving you much time, I'm going to give you 5 minutes for this whole exercise. And then I want you to talk after that about how coming to church changes the week after Sunday. So I'm giving you until 10 of. Go to. Okay, I need to reconvene this group. I'm not going to ask for reports from every table because we don't have time, but is there anyone who would like to share something of what those at your table said about what they come expecting or hoping for on Sunday?
We were, I think our consensus was that it was about energy. I had the image of a rope tow. It's there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When you come to church, you get to hold on. And you know it's there, but it's different watching it at a distance and then holding on and getting that uphill energy that we get then, we all agree, for the whole week. That we missed
For that uphill energy that you get for the whole week, sort of like a rope tow for those of you who like skiing metaphors, especially beginner skiing metaphors.
It's there all the time. All you have to do is stand
It's there, but when you come on Sunday, you find yourself pulled up. Deborah.
We have another metaphor. We said it's sort of like yoga. Kind of centers you. You know that you're going to find like-minded people you after the week, and and so forth, and haven't had a chance to focus on spirituality maybe as much, and you come here and you just get focused and centered, and you feel like you're ready for the next week.
So you get focused and centered, which takes you into the next week. Yes.
One of the things that we had mentioned was that we come here to pray and to connect with God and to remember those who died in the past 72 hours.
We come here to focus on God and also to remember those who have died in the last hours, which this week seemed particularly important, I think, for a lot of people. Bob.
I like the word that was brought up. It's a reset button. It's sort of like after your week, everything else is gone on, and you come back here, and it really reflects.
It's an opportunity to reset. So what about in the days afterwards?
Yeah,
Juicy.
one thing we came to toward the end is that everybody agrees that we love to be in the community, this community. We love each other and we pray together and we get energy for the following week. But I thought that when we feel a community, the community goes beyond what we have here. And we bring with us the openness to the community at large. In the street, and when we hear news, we feel really our Christian education of looking at everybody as part of our community.
So Juicy just shared that we love this community here and feeling part of this community. But what happens through worship is that when we leave here, we have a broader sense of community, so that we actually take that out into the world and can see the people we see on the street, even when we're reading the news, as part of the community that we're called into. So it's not just this tight-knit band on Sunday. Anyone else about what happens after Sunday? Terry.
I'd like to second what Juicy just said, but I think what Andrew said in the service was particularly moving for me, because I've been involved in affordable housing advocacy, and I thought I was there all alone. And all of a sudden, he gets up there and he's talking about how what he does here really does inform his life. And I think that's what we're doing.
So what happens here actually changes the way you think about everything, including the work that you do apart from this place. Okay. Because we only have about 7 minutes left, I'm going to move a little bit. Some of you may have heard any of the clergy talk at some point about a wonderful little book by Abraham Heschel. It's called Sabbath. It is 90 pages long, really short. You think, great, I'll read that this afternoon. It's among the most dense books you'll ever read. Abraham Joshua Heschel was a remarkable rabbi, became a leader in the civil rights movement, but wrote this wonderful book about Sabbath, and I do commend it to you. Just don't think you can breeze through it, because I found myself going, oh, let me read that paragraph again. But what he talks about is that our weeks, and he's writing as a Jew, our weeks are meant to be a pilgrimage to and then from the Sabbath. That the Sabbath is actually meant to be the hinge in time and the hinge in our week. And I give Sarah Cunningham full credit. When we read this book together as a vestry, she coined this wonderful phrase that I've used ever since, which is that what he's talking about is a kind of architecture of time. And I love that, because we don't think of time as having an architecture. But it's right, that it sort of builds to the center and then it flows from that center. And so the Sabbath is that hinge point that informs what comes before it in our expectation and what informs us as we leave the Sabbath in terms of the rest of our week. Now, part of what I find remarkable is that every week when we gather, I'm actually getting to the Eucharist, who knew? We come, the central point of our Sabbath is the celebration of the Eucharist. And it has this remarkable specificity and concreteness to it. Bread and wine and money come up to the altar. Those are, in fact, very mundane things. bread and wine and money. Money passes through our hands all day long. Bread is, quote unquote, the staff of life. Wine is something we all know and many of us partake of throughout the week. But it comes up down that long aisle up to the altar together. And those things are always, as we talked about last week in the instructed Eucharist, signs of our life and labor. Now, in an agricultural community, the obvious connection, not just with the money, but with the bread and the wine, would be a lot clearer. But the truth is, that's what they are. They are symbols of our life and labor. So we both remember in that service, recount in that service, Jesus' Last Supper, but because we bring our gifts to the table, we are fully present in it. It's not like we grab the stuff from the side and say, remember how Jesus did this. We take our stuff, and it becomes the means through which that meal is reenacted. So it's not just a recitation about a past event, and then through that, about resurrection, Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again, but about the earthly reality that led to God's decision to transform our reality, to actually crack it open into a reality we didn't dare hope for. Imagine taking the most mundane stuff and using it as Jesus uses it to say, this is my body and blood. And then from that to travel to the cross and know that through his body and blood, we are brought through death into resurrection. It's an astonishing journey. And we reenact all of it around the Eucharist every single week. We couldn't reenact it if there hadn't been a resurrection. It would have been a really sad supper, right? We reenact it because the Last Supper became the first meal for the resurrected life, because through it, he told us what was to come. So through that meal, we are reminded, through our participation, not just God's, that we are invited to have our lives broken open by the power both of death, but most importantly, of resurrection. The fact is, I could stand here all day long and talk about the power of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. But to actually re-engage that with the specificity of the bread and wine that is offered by us, along with our gifts of money, which represent our labor, is actually to say, we're all in the midst of it. To let it actually be our offering of, as the prayer book says, praise and thanksgiving. We offer you these gifts. We also offer you our sacrifice of praise and thanksgiving. That's what we're doing when we bring the bread and the wine. And we are reminded by our participation in the Eucharist of God's reality and the truth for all of us, which is that death is never the last word, but in fact is transformed by God into new life. I think it's really important to remember, I'm going to overuse this word right now. Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me. But we also, in that Eucharist, are remembered ourselves. And it means we both remember the truth, but also what remembered literally means. We are put back together. We are remembered because we are actually put together by Christ's love in the Eucharist. And that's why every church does this every week as our principal act of devotion, because lots of things happen during the week that pull us apart. And lots of things may happen in the weeks to come that feel like they are pulling us apart. But if we have as that hinge this meal in which we remember Christ's death and resurrection, and also realize that we have been a part of that, then we can stay connected, not just on Sunday, but for the days to come. Thank you.
To learn more about St. James Church, visit stjames.org. That's stjames.org.